Welcome to this session on the Materials Manager modifying wall constructions. So I'm going to go back to the Materials Manager and open that back up. And I'm going to go back and select the metal wall panel that we created by copying the existing brick wall construction. So if we look here on the right, we've got the layers of the wall. It starts with the inside layer first. So we've got the plasterboard layer number 1. Notice it highlights here in the graphic so that I can see its location. If I expand, there's some data associated with that. For instance, the thickness, which is set at 13 millimeters. And then there is an air gap, 95 millimeters. That's also basically where the metal stud is for this particular wall. And then there is a layer of plywood, 19 millimeters. Another air gap of 50 millimeters. And then the actual brickwork, which is 105 millimeters. So this is the layer we're going to change. And we're going to change that to a metal panel. Now, our metal panel is actually going to be made up of 2 layers, the insulation layer and the metal layer. I'm going to start with the metal layer, and then we will also create that insulation layer of the panel. So I'm going to right-click on my brickwork, and I'm just going to change the layer. Select Change Layer. It's going to give me a pick list, and I'm going to scroll down and find the metals category, and then expand that to see various different metal materials. I'll select steel, and we've changed that layer. Now I'm going to expand this to see those properties because I don't want a thickness of 105 millimeters. This is just a thin layer of metal in probably 1 millimeter is good there. And we'll see that graphic change over there. So in this case, we just changed that layer, but as I said, we also need a layer of insulation to actually create the full panel. And so in this case, I'm going to add a layer. So I'm going to come down here and use the Add button. So when I add a layer, it gives me a pick list. So again, I'm going to scroll down and select the insulation category. And then we simply want to find the type of insulation that we want. And I'm going to select this polyurethane foam. And it adds that layer. Now note, initially the thickness is 0. We have to give it an actual thickness. And we're going to use 80 millimeters. And now we can actually see it graphically. Now a couple of check boxes here. So for instance, I can toggle on that this is continuous insulation, and also that it would include a vapor barrier, an inside liner on that panel. And so we'll check that on as well. The other thing we need to do is rearrange our list here. In other words, this layer of insulation should come first, and then the steel should be the outermost layer. And so all we have to do is select that layer, and there are up and down arrow keys here. So we can resort our layers there to get the correct order. So we now have an air gap, and then the polyurethane foam of the panel, and then the outer steel layer of that panel. And that completes our construction. And once we have that construction created, we might want to scroll down here and look at the construction details. So for instance, we can see the U value of that particular construction. If we compare that, we can see we've got a U value of around 0.25. If we compare that to our brick U value, we're actually getting a much better U value with the metal wall panel, and that's because of that insulation in the panel. So we might want to come back to our brick construction, and rather than having this air gap at the metal stud, we could change that to a layer of insulation. So for instance, we might put some batt insulation in that metal stud, and that of course would improve our U value. But let's go back to the metal wall panel and look at some of the other data here. I go all the way down to the bottom, and we have some condensation graphs. So the first one here is a conduction time series, and so it just shows the performance of that wall over time, over the hours of the day. And it derives that graph based on those thermal properties of each material type that makes up the construction. If we select the Show Condensation icon, that will open a graph that will actually show us where condensation may occur in our construction and give us some indication of where we might need to include a vapor barrier. Now we can change the month here. Let's see, as I scroll through that, that's going to change where that condensation might occur. And so based on that information, we could make any appropriate adjustments to our construction. So I'm going to go ahead and apply the changes we've made. I'm going to select OK. And in the next session, we will actually apply the new metal panel construction to that second floor of the office building.
If you found this video helpful, please give it a like. If you want to see more such series, consider subscribing to our channel. Thank you, and see you next time.